Despite conventional wisdom, debt itself isn't good or bad. It's neutral. Don't believe it? Stick with me here. I'm going to explain why having debt isn't the issue. It's about how you manage it. Debt has existed, well, forever. It just used to look a little different. In past years, you'd borrow a bag of grain or you'd repay the lender by helping them plow a field, harvest a crop, or build an animal pen. These trades ensured people had the things they needed when they needed them. That bartering system hasn't disappeared entirely, but debt has become much more structured over time. It's not just a simple agreement between two people. It comes with contracts, interest rates, and credit scores. But even with all these layers, the actual purpose of debt hasn't changed. You're making a trade to do things that might not have been possible otherwise. Hi, I'm Demetriades. Most people approach debt in one of two ways. Some people expect to always carry debt because they believe it's necessary to fund their lifestyle or make ends meet. Others view debt as something to avoid entirely because they think it ties up their income and limits their freedom. Dave Ramsey, for example, comes down on this side because of his own experience with debt and preaches no debt as his mantra. But both camps often fail to recognize a critical idea. Not all debt is created equal. There are categories of debt. When debt helps you move forward, adding value to your life, or helping you reach a goal, it's working for you, and that's a good thing. But when it drains your finances without offering much in return, it's working against you, and that's bad. Plan your debt, no regret. So how do you tell the difference? Let's start by talking about the kind of debt we typically consider as good. People hear the term and think it's some kind of free pass to borrow without worry. But good debt isn't about the label, it's about the details. Take home ownership. Most folks will tell you a mortgage is the ultimate good debt. And yet it can be, if it's handled right. Real estate provides a tangible asset, and it tends to appreciate over time. It also offers tax benefits. But a lot of people buy homes they can't actually afford, forgetting about all the other costs: property taxes, maintenance, insurance. Yeah, they've got the house of their dreams, but there's barely enough left over for anything else. That's a super stressful situation, especially when unexpected expenses pop up. Sometimes the better move is downsizing or leasing until you're ready to own a house that fits your budget and your life. How about paying for a college education? Most people say student loans are good debt. Education does provide a leg up career-wise, but I'd argue that whether it's good debt depends on how you approach it. Too many students jump into college without a plan, and then they graduate with a fancy degree and no job. Wait a second, isn't good debt supposed to help you move forward in life? Now, I'm not saying don't invest in education. If you've been watching my videos, you know I'm all about lifelong learning. Just think it through. Plan your debt, no regret. Whether you're considering funding college for yourself, your kids, grandkids, I have a suggestion that might help educational debt land more squarely in the good category. Around the time my kids turn 16, we invest in an aptitude test. It costs around $1,000 for the test, but it's worth every penny. An aptitude test identifies what someone is naturally good at, not necessarily what they're passionate about. These aptitudes are then matched with potential careers that actively use those strengths. Next, Mom, my student, and we narrow down the field of careers into 4 or 5 options. Then we reach out to our family, friends, and friends of friends to coordinate a few days for our student to shadow those people in those fields. Once the shadowing is complete, our student has a pretty good sense of, this is the thing I want to learn about. This is what I want to do. Then as a family, we start researching the right school, training program, certificate, and/or path to help our student move towards their goal. This improves our students' chances for success and life satisfaction and assigns true purpose to the educational investment. And true purpose is the hallmark of a good debt. Now, what about taking on a car loan? Cars are tricky. They're not a classic example of good debt because a car is a depreciating asset, losing value the minute you drive it off the lot. But sometimes borrowing for a car is necessary. A reliable vehicle is pretty essential for getting to work, managing family responsibilities, or running a business. The key is balance. The car loan must fit your budget, and the car itself should match your needs. Do you need a brand new SUV with all the bells and whistles? Or will a well-maintained used car do the job just as well? This is where the details matter. If the loan is manageable, the car serves a clear purpose, and it aligns with your financial goals, then borrowing for a car can make a lot of sense. Just remember, the goal is reliability, not luxury. Let the car work for you, not the other way around. Lastly, let's look at business debt. Borrowing to start or grow your business can be a great debt, but you have to do your homework. Maybe you need to buy inventory, solve a cash flow issue, or upgrade your equipment. These are all legitimate expenses to get a business running smoothly. But what's the probability of success? Do you have a contingency plan? These things can mean the difference between exponential growth, incremental growth, or the end of the business. The details matter. Plan your debt, no regret. Now that we've discussed what good debt can look like, let's flip the coin. Bad debt. Maybe you think I'm going to tell you that sometimes bad debt can be good. Nope. Sorry. There's a double standard here. Good debt can be bad, but bad debt is never good. Why? Because it keeps you from achieving your goals. It drains your finances without offering anything meaningful in return. This is where something called your debt to income or DTI ratio comes into play. If you've never heard of it, DTI is a simple measure of how much of your income goes toward debt payments. It's a great way to check whether you're balancing your borrowing or heading into dangerous territory. A high DTI means your debt could start limiting your ability to save, invest, or handle unexpected expenses. Basically, any number over 36% DTI is a big red flag. Knowing that, let's talk about the kind of borrowing that can tip you into that territory. Credit cards are the go-to example of bad debt for a reason. These little pieces of plastic can be handy if you're paying off the balance every month. But the minute you start carrying a balance, they turn into one of the fastest ways to sabotage your financial progress. With interest rates that can easily hit 20% or more, that quick $500 shopping spree can balloon into a much bigger problem before you know it. It's not that credit cards are evil, it's just that they're so easy to misuse. Swiping for things you can't afford or to fill budget gaps is like setting a financial trap for your future self. Next up are the loans we convince ourselves we need, but don't. Borrowing for a luxury vacation, a fancy new car, or the latest gadget might feel great in the moment because you get that instant gratification. But these loans rarely offer any real long-term value. And the payments usually last a lot longer than the joy of the purchase. Some of the worst bad debt comes from predatory loans, like payday loans. These things are marketed as lifesavers for people in a tight spot, but they're more like financial quicksand. Sure, you can borrow $500 to cover an emergency, but by the time you pay it back with interest and fees, you might be out $700 or more. And if you can't pay it back right away, the costs keep climbing. It's bad debt disguised as a solution, and it can be a hard cycle to escape. But bad debt doesn't always show up with a warning label. Sometimes it's sneaky, presenting itself as an opportunity or even a necessity. And it often starts with what seemed like a smart move. A mortgage on a home that checked all the boxes, but in hindsight stretched your finances just a little too far. Or a business loan for a project that didn't quite deliver the returns you'd hoped for. That's why it's important to keep your DTI ratio in mind. So even good debt must be respected and not overindulged, or you wind up with bad debt. Bad debt always takes more than it gives and leaves you with financial strain instead of financial progress and freedom. Plan your debt, no regret. Remember, debt itself is neutral. It's simply an agreement to borrow resources now with the promise to repay them later. Whether that debt works for you or against you depends entirely on how it's used and how it's managed. So let's say that as you've been listening, you've realized, or maybe you already knew, that you've got some bad debt weighing you down. Does that mean all hope is lost? Absolutely not. Bad debt doesn't have to be a life sentence. It's just a hurdle, and hurdles were made to be cleared. What matters is recognizing it for what it is and making a plan to take control. Let me give you a real-life example from a lady we'll call Susan Parker. A few years ago, Susan was earning $200,000 a year. thanks in part to her master's degree. But despite her healthy salary, she felt financially stuck. Her $500,000 mortgage at 7% came with a $3,300 monthly bill. She still owed $30,000 in graduate school loans and was paying $850 a month to bring that balance down. On top of that, she had $20,000 in credit card debt with an $1,800 monthly payment and was leasing a luxury SUV for $950 a month. Her total debt payments added up to almost $7,000, over 41% of her income. With taxes and other living expenses, her DTI ratio was dangerously high, and she wasn't making progress toward her long-term financial goals. Susan knew something had to change, so she started by addressing her credit card debt. She consolidated the $20,000 balance into a lower interest personal loan and committed to paying $800 monthly on it. Then, and this was a hard decision, she worked with her dealership to downgrade her SUV lease to a more modest sedan, cutting her monthly payment by more than $400. These changes freed up $1,600 a month that she could use to tackle debt. But Susan also knew that cutting costs wasn't enough. She had to stop the cycle of accumulating new debt. So she made a commitment: no more credit card swipes unless she could pay the balance off in full each month. That meant thinking about her purchases much more carefully. She also set up a small emergency fund to cover unexpected expenses, so she didn't have to use her credit cards for that purpose. Then she focused on paying down her existing debt. She started with the personal loan. By applying the entire $1,600 in savings each month, she knocked it out in 14 months, slashing her debt nearly in half while also boosting her confidence. Then she turned her attention to her student loan. By this time, her $800 monthly payment had already brought the balance down to about $20,000. And now she could add her freed up funds to her payment. By paying $2,400 per month, she knocked out that $20,000 in just 9 months. In less than 2 years, Susan paid off over $50,000 worth of debt and freed up nearly $2,500 per month to dedicate to her long-term goals. And think about this: investing that $2,500 monthly with an average annual return of 7% means Susan's money could grow to approximately $430,000 in just 10 years. So by stewarding her resources wisely and paying down bad debt, Susan set herself up for a much more secure future. You can do the same. Your debt load and timeline might be different, but the principle's solid and it works. You can make it work for you. Plan your debt, no regret. Getting rid of bad debt isn't just about having extra cash. It's also about feeling lighter. Debt has a deep emotional impact in addition to the more obvious financial stresses. Removing that burden lets you focus your time, your energy, and your money on what really matters to you. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Keith Demetriades. If you found this video helpful and you'd like more information on debt management and financial planning, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you know somebody that could benefit from this information, please share the video. Be a savvy steward. Make your life count.